1597. The Korean peninsula was burning. Japan had launched its second invasion, an army of 140,000 men, the largest military force ever assembled in East Asian history up to that point. They had burned the capital, they had crushed the Korean army. Every Korean admiral had surrendered, fled, or been executed. Every admiral. Except one. And that man, imprisoned by his own king just months before the invasion, stripped of every rank, tortured on the orders of the very court he had served, was sitting in a war room, staring at a map. He had 13 warships. Japan had 333. Stop and think about that for a second. But here's what almost no one talks about when it comes to what happened next. This wasn't a miracle. It wasn't luck. It wasn't courage in any ordinary sense of the word. This was a trap, and Japan walked straight into it.
Let me give you a real sense of what Korea was actually facing in 1597. 5 years earlier, in 1592, Japan had launched its first invasion under Toyotomi Hideyoshi, the warlord who unified Japan after a century of civil war and was now looking outward. His plan was simple and terrifying. Conquer Korea, then conquer China, then conquer the world. Take a moment and feel the crushing weight of that sentence. This wasn't a border skirmish. This was a continental conquest plan. And in 1592, it almost worked. Japanese samurai forces, armed with Portuguese-style arquebuses that Korea had never encountered in battle, pierced the Korean peninsula in just 19 days. 19 days. The Korean army collapsed. The capital, Hansong, modern-day Seoul, fell in less than 3 weeks. The only thing that slowed Japan's advance wasn't the Korean army on land, it was the Korean Navy at sea. And the Korean Navy had one commander, Yi Sun-sin. But here's what almost no one talks about. The man who single-handedly kept Korea alive in 1592 was sitting in a prison cell in 1597. His own king had ordered his arrest. Yi Sun-sin was not a politician. He never learned how to be one. In a court full of survivors who lived by flattery and compromise, Yi Sun-sin survived by winning. He invented a class of warship called the Kobukson, the turtle ship, an iron-reinforced vessel with metal spikes on the roof to stop enemy soldiers from boarding, cannons that could fire in every direction, fast enough to maneuver, but heavy enough to ram. Korea had never built anything like it. No one had. In 1592, using these ships and a strategy of aggressively targeting Japan's supply lines rather than engaging their army directly on land, Yi Sun-sin won every single naval engagement. Not most of them. Every single one. 23 battles, 23 victories. Numbers always need to be felt, not just read. Japan lost an estimated 300 ships during Yi Sun-sin's 1592 campaign. He lost none. Not one ship. But power doesn't reward competence. When competence makes politicians look weak. Rivals at court whispered in the king's ear. They said Yi Sun-sin was arrogant, that he had defied royal orders, which was technically true, that he was planning treason, which was a lie.
The king believed the lie. In 1597, Yi Sun-sin was stripped of his rank, arrested, brought back to Seoul, and tortured. He was about to be executed. A senior official intervened at the last moment and saved his life. They spared him, but demoted him to the lowest rank possible, a common foot soldier. 3 months later, Japan launched its second invasion. The Admiral who replaced Yi Sun-sin, he led the fleet directly into a Japanese ambush and lost 157 of Korea's remaining 166 warships in a single afternoon. Korea now had 13 warships. Japan had 333. And the court, out of options, out of time, out of everything, sent a letter to the man they had just tortured. They asked him to come back.
I want you to pause here, not to feel sorry for him,
but to really understand what was happening inside him. A lesser man would have said no, or worse, said yes, then failed just to prove a point. Yi Sun-sin said yes, and he meant it. He came to what was left of the Korean fleet and wrote in his war diary, we still have those pages, the NanJung Ilgi, one of the most remarkable military documents in history. He wrote, I still have 12 ships, and I am still alive. In some historical sources, 13 ships. The number varies by record, but the meaning is singular. He had almost nothing, and he wrote that not as desperation, as a statement of fact. This is what I have. This is what I will use. Take a moment and feel the crushing weight of that sentence. Not 12 ships and a prayer, not 12 ships and a miracle waiting to happen. 12 ships and a plan. Because Yi Sun-sin had already chosen the battlefield. The Myeongnyang Strait, a stretch of water just 300 meters wide, with a current so powerful it reversed direction twice a day. Japan's 333 ships couldn't maneuver inside it. Yi Sun-sin's 13 could. But there was something Japan didn't know. Something Yi Sun-sin had already calculated. The tide was about to turn.
October 26th, 1597.
Dawn. The Japanese fleet appeared on the horizon. 133 warships in the first wave, with the full 333 behind them. Yi Sun-sin positioned his 13 ships at the entrance to the Myeongnyang Strait. His officers begged him to retreat. This wasn't cowardice. This was math. 13 against 133 wasn't a battle. It was a massacre. Yi Sun-sin's response, recorded in Korean military chronicles. He who seeks death shall live. He who seeks life shall die. He ordered the fleet forward. What happened next has been studied at military academies to this day. The Japanese warships entered the strait in a long column, forced to by the narrow channel. Their numerical advantage evaporated instantly. They couldn't spread out, couldn't flank. 333 ships became a single file line. And the current that Yi Sun-sin had studied, had planned around, had timed the entire engagement based on, began to reverse. Japanese ships started colliding with each other. The current pulled their lighter vessels sideways, exposing their hulls. Yi Sun-sin's turtle ships, heavier and built for exactly this kind of close-range fighting, moved through the chaos like iron through water. Jobuksun cannons fired at point-blank range into the exposed hulls of Japanese vessels. The Japanese commanding admiral, standing on the lead ship, was killed by Korean cannon fire in the first hour. Stop and think about that for a second. The commanding admiral of a 333-ship fleet, dead in the first hour, in front of 13 ships. What happened next was no longer a military engagement. It was a collapse. Japanese ships turned and fled, collisions, capsizing. The narrow strait, which should have been the bottleneck that killed Yi Sun-shin's tiny fleet, became the trap that destroyed Japan's greatest armada. Final count: 31 Japanese warships sunk or destroyed. Hundreds of smaller supply vessels lost. Korean losses: not one ship. Not one. Yi Sun-shin had done it again. But here's what history books almost never say. The Battle of Myeongnyang didn't just stop Japan's naval advance. It broke the entire second invasion. Without control of the sea, Japan could not resupply its army on land. 140,000 soldiers on the Korean peninsula, the largest invasion force in East Asian history, began to starve. One admiral, 13 ships, and the entire axis of a continental war shifted. Here's what should trouble you. For centuries after the war, Yi Sun-shin was almost entirely absent from official Japanese historical records. Not because he wasn't known, because he was known too well. The Imjin War, what Koreans call the 1592 to 1598 conflict, ended with Japan's withdrawal. Toyotomi Hideyoshi died in 1598. His invasion died with him. The dynasty he built collapsed shortly after. A Korean admiral with 13 ships was one of the primary reasons why. When Meiji Japan began constructing a nationalist narrative of Japanese military greatness, Yi Sun-shin was a problem. You can't celebrate Japanese naval invincibility when a Korean admiral had defeated your navy 23 times without a single loss. So they did what empires do with inconvenient history. They minimized, they reframed, they called the war a cultural exchange. They called the defeats tactical retreats. But here's what they couldn't erase. Late 19th and early 20th century Japanese naval commanders, including Admiral Togo Heihachiro, who defeated the Russian fleet at the Battle of Tsushima in 1905, studied Yi Sun-shin. Togo, when called the greatest admiral in Japanese history, is reported to have said, "You may compare me to Nelson. Do not compare me to Yi Sun-shin. He is of a different class." A Japanese admiral, calling a Korean admiral he was never supposed to admire the greatest naval commander in history. Take a moment and feel the crushing weight of that sentence. Yi Sun-shin died in the last battle of the war, November 19th, 1598. He was struck by a bullet. Japanese fire or friendly fire, historians still debate, during the Battle of Myeongnyang, the final major engagement of the Imjin War. His last recorded words, according to his nephew, who was present at his side, "The battle is at its height. "Do not announce my death." He died in the moment of his final victory, and his soldiers kept fighting, unaware that their commander was gone. There's something about Yi Sun-shin that resists the way we usually tell stories about great men. He wasn't born into greatness. He failed his military entrance exam twice before passing on his third attempt at 32 years old. He was posted to the most remote, thankless assignments in the kingdom. He was overlooked, sidelined, and ultimately imprisoned and tortured by the very king he had served without question. He was handed 13 ships and told to stop an empire. And he did. But here's the question I keep coming back to. What do you do with the fact that the greatest naval commander in human history spent most of his career being punished for being too good at his job? History doesn't remember the kind. It doesn't remember the politically convenient. It doesn't even remember the loyal. History remembers the ones who, in their darkest moment, with 13 ships facing 333, looked at the water, looked at the current, and said, "I still have 12 ships, and I am still alive." That wasn't hope. That was something harder than hope. That was clarity. And maybe that's the only thing that has ever truly changed the world. Drop your answer in the comments. I read every single one. If Yi Sun-shin hadn't won at Myeongnyang, Japan would have controlled the Korean peninsula and potentially invaded China within a year. Do you think the world today would look different if that had happened? If this story moved you, hit like and subscribe.
Step into a world of ancient empires. Discover the secrets of the past. Witness the battles that shaped history. Subscribe now to Lantern Asian History